Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. So I want to continue discussion about the banking crisis, also to go through some of your comments and give a special shout out to Soprano who helped the channel with pizza. And I'm just telling you guys, feed me pizza and I'm able to put out content for you. So do appreciate that. Let's just take a look at what's going on around the world here. So this was just a headline here. Jamie Dimon is vying to take control of First Republic Bank. Report says after JP Morgan steered clear of SVB, and they're referring to Silicon Valley Bank. And I guess JP Morgan and PNC are going to be bidding on First Republic. We just talked about that in the last video. And then their bids are due on Sunday, I believe. So we'll probably have some sort of announcement come Sunday, and we'll see. This has happened before on weekends, which is so crazy how they do these things. The other thing is that if there are going to be any kind of regulation or reform, this kind of stuff, the big banks will probably be involved in also writing said regulations. So, who knows what we're going to get out of this. I also want to go through just a couple things, just so we're on the same page. If you're familiar with the essentially the Great Depression / market crash of 29, you would know about the Glass-Steagall Act. So this is the basic idea was if we're going to try to regulate banks more. And at the time, banks were essentially too speculative, doing too much investment making kind of things. And the idea of a bank is I give them my money, and then the bank makes money by using my money to give it to basically other people and lending it out. And this is sort of a recurring theme you're going to see sort of in different answers to comments that I have. But I just wanted to understand that I'm fine with regulation. And I keep saying that because I think it's a good discussion to have, to be perfectly frank. After the, it was passed in 33 Glass-Steagall to essentially prevent banking crisis happening again, was actually repealed, maybe taken back. This was because I just want to make sure we get our dates correct. This was in 99 that they repealed Glass-Steagall, right? And again, this is sort of like who you ask in history, but I would make the case that definitely taking back Glass-Steagall led to the financial crisis of 08, right? So you have the crash in 29, you put in banking regulations in 33, you take away those regulations at 99, then you have a crash again in 2008, right? And I lived through this stuff. And for those of you who are old enough to remember this, you would know there's a lot of protests and stuff like that. And the basic gist is there's a bunch of bailouts for rich people, essentially. Now we had the 08 crisis, so then you do this same kind of pattern, right? You're going to pass more regulations to say let's not have this happen again. So that would be in 2010, right? And then what do you think happens, right? Then you repeal said regulations. That would be in 2018. And now we have a crash again, right? So this is sort of why I say that I'm fine with banking regulations, because if we take them back, it leads to a crash. We've had it happen a couple times now, right? And this is sort of why I bring this up. Now, I want to go through some of your comments because I understand people may disagree, but I just want to make sure we're on the same page, because I hope we can all agree that laws have been passed and laws have been taken back, right? I hope those are all clear. First, we have a Jet saying, remember to hit the like button if you're unbiased content and real news. I appreciate that. So I agree. Hit the like button. And then next, this is from Dazed Havoc saying, hi, Chris. Would more regulation really help? The reason most of these banks are going under is of treasury bonds that were thought safe. It seems like more fault of the Fed hiking rates so fast that these banks failed. The Fed itself was losing money as a result of its own terrible decisions. Sure. So the question is, hey, isn't just the interest rates going up, isn't that the cause, not anything to do with banking regulation? So think of it this way. If the banks were not in a risky position, then the rates wouldn't necessarily affect them that much. So what do I mean by risky position? So let's say, for example, I give my money to the bank, and the bank by law can't give my money to anyone else. For example, it just has to sit in that bank. It has to stay there. Cash-wise, they can't buy any bonds, they can't do anything at all. That kind of regulation there would prevent this sort of situation, right? So we're requiring the banks to hold my money. I'm just giving you one example. Let's go through another comment, and I hope you guys understand this. So we'll go through some more of these. And this is person saying, this is from Express Content saying, I don't agree with that. I don't agree that deregulation in Trump era caused this whole bank sector to come crashing down. Okay, so we both agree that Trump deregulated the banks. As long as we agree with that, right? But he doesn't, or she, could be he or she, doesn't think that the deregulation caused a crash. Okay, we'll keep going here. In a rising interest rate environment and people pulling out all cash from the bank at the same time, No banks will survive this even back in the Obama era. If the interest rate rose sharply before Trump's deregulation, we will most likely run into the same issue. How do you stop companies with millions in the bank to pull all of their cash out at the same time? That was what happened to SVB. Okay, good question. So there's a couple things why regulations I think are important. So if you've been following the channel, you would know we've talked about this. So Peter Thiel, he is a big campaign donor, gives a lot of money to Republicans, not just making stuff up. Also, too, there was a report in the news that one of his associates recently fell out of a window. Again, I'm not making stuff up. I just tell you what's happening. And he was one of the people that was in social media telling all his buddies to start, pulling money out. So there has been some talk of whether or not we should have regulations on that kind of thing of like, how do you regulate when someone essentially is starting a bank run, and all these kind of things are pretty crazy to be talking about, and it depends on if you want to remember these kind of events or not. The other issue as well is like, okay, you can talk about the interest rates, but I would make the case as well as going back to the other one is you can have depository requirements, meaning the banks have to have your money. One of the reasons that people were sort of pulling their money out is they were worried that the bank didn't have enough money for everyone, essentially. The other thing is too is not like, do you have to have money for everyone? Where are, said companies that are getting all this money in the first place is because you have this environment where we made sort of like regulations. We make it too easy for people to get loans, right? So if you like just give out free money to everybody, you're way overextended. So I'm sure you already have your mind made up on these kind of things, but I'm coming from the point of view that we can have a real discussion about this. So I'm fine. Like, I'm fine with regulations, be it higher, depository requirements of banks, be it not make it so easy to lend out money. You could make the case too in terms of regulations that you make fines and penalties super severe for banks who do too risky of stuff, for example, or for people who cost bank runs essentially. So you can decide if you agree or disagree with anything that I've said, but I think it is a discussion to have. Also too, this is someone else, this is George saying, when it comes to banking, airlines, and railways, more regulations is always the best option if history is any guide. So I'm fine with regulations, and I agree with that. And then we're talking about banking, airlines, and railways. Another person saying here, this is from Craig, I favor more regulation. However, regulations mean nothing if they are not enforced. Unregulated banks run amok, fueled by greed. How many times have to go through this? Okay, so I'm with you as well, Craig. So you could certainly make the case that, yes, even if we have laws on the books, if we don't enforce said laws. So the report came out that said, like, SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, was warned like 31 times, and the regulators could have came and, punished them more severely. I would say, Craig, probably what was going on at that time, or just, recently, the Silicon Valley Bank essentially greasing the right people in order to, yes, there are regulations, but they're paying off the right people to sort of back off, basically, that kind of thing. The argument that the Fed would make, my understanding is that they would say, well, we just don't have enough people on staff, that we're underfunded to properly regulate or properly enforce is a better way to say it. But either way, I hope that we are in agreement that, yes, laws and regulations don't mean anything if you're actually not going to enforce them. So I would make the case that you would want to fund said regulators and also to make the penalties more severe. And I'm coming from the point of view that as just regular people, I prefer us regular people not being on essentially the much just a bad end of the bill. Bill meaning that who has to pay the money, if something bad happens. So for example, let's say a bank did a whole bunch of risky things, lend out money to, buy a bunch of houses they couldn't afford to buy. Like say, I give money to someone to buy 5 houses, and then that person fails to pay me back on said 5 houses. Who kind of, picks up the bill for this sort of overextension of lending? Is it the regular taxpayer or not, right? So this is sort of why you want to make penalties more severe for this kind of stuff. Here's another one. This is from Bikron. This is a good example of sort of a comment you have to deal with on YouTube all the time. But it is what it is. That's why I read it to you guys to demonstrate sort of the issue with making YouTube videos. This person says, I blame progressive Democrats like Bernie Sanders, OAC, I think they mean AOC, I'm sure, etc., who made Democrats offer free and easy money to people who didn't work during the pandemic. So this person thinks that Bernie Sanders and Democrats were the ones, or AOC are the ones that gave all the money to people during the pandemic. Okay, they were making more money than they made while working. These politicians want to destroy the USA economy. Now, I want to just point out a couple of really should be obvious things. This is a headline, but you can look it up. And just showing you one headline that's easy to see. In an unprecedented move, Trump orders Trump's name. Treasury orders Trump's name printed on stimulus checks. Right, this is back in 2020. It was something that Trump really wanted. He wanted to give money to people, and essentially made sure that his name was on said check. So Trump was giving out stimulus checks. That's a real thing. I don't know what else to say. And also, too, moreover, Biden extended giving out stimulus checks. Right, President Biden signed stimulus package into law. Here's how it affects you. And then there's tons of articles on how much money was given to whatever person. So. But this is the kind of stuff you have to deal with on YouTube is people decide that they only want to look at one thing and not look at something else. I try my best to show you guys everything. That's why I say, we got to go through basic history to make sure that we're on the same page. And I also encourage you, please just read just a little bit. Read a little about the Great Depression, read a little about Glass-Steagall, read a little about Dodd-Frank that was repealed, read a little bit, about what's happening right now. And I put out these videos for you mostly just to get you like, hey, this is what's going on. This is kind of entertaining. You can watch it while you're having lunch or whatever like that, because I watch YouTube as well while I'm having lunch. And then later, I check things to sort of make sure that, okay, I get it. And also, too, my opinion as well is when I like to watch YouTube for myself, I also do want to see another person's opinion. Like I like to read something, and we're essentially reading the same thing, and I get a different person's opinion on that. The same way that I hope, for you guys, you say, oh, okay, yeah, I did see that JP Morgan wanted to, buy First Republic. I wonder what other people think about that. And that's sort of how I think of a community, is that we come together with literally facts, and then we state each other's opinion on this stuff. But when people start just making stuff up and just like basically saying things that are false, it becomes really, really frustrating. And that's sort of part of what's frustrating about YouTube, or you could say any social media these days, is when people just make stuff up. So I can't state it enough. I'm totally fine with you having your own opinion. The same way I like to have my own opinion and have a discussion about that. But I hope we can all agree that we're here to try to talk about facts and reality. I really hope so. And also, too, how to prevent sort of bad things from happening in the future. I think it's really important to learn from history. And so when I go through and say, oh, yeah, okay, there's a crash, there's regulation, okay? If we take away the regulation, there's another crash, and then we regulate again, and then we take away regulation, there's another crash. Like, it's pretty obvious to me. And so, yeah, I think what happens, I'm just talking to myself, or talking to you, I guess I should say, I think what happens with a lot of people, they get so blinded into really wanting something to be true that they kind of just turn off their brain or mind to just ignore certain things and only focus on other things. And I think the stimulus check example I just gave you is a really perfect one. Where someone literally writes and comments that they blame the Democrats for giving all of the stimulus check money when it was, I'm not making it up. It was like, Trump gave out the first stimulus check, and Biden continued to give out stimulus checks. So I don't know what else to say. I mean, I think it's so obvious. But, and I understand that people have, whatever opinion that they want because they only want to look at certain kind of things. I will say in the stock market, though, or economy, et cetera, at the end of the day, you can see the numbers for yourself, right? We can all see that First Republic Bank is failing. And, one of the things that I think is so important, again, is to sort of, look at this, what happened, and say, okay, how can we not have this kind of things happen again? Unfortunately, though, the way that this worked and the world works, and I mentioned to you at the very beginning, there'll be some sort of reform or regulations passed, et cetera, I'm sure, after this. But the big banks will be in on the writing of said legislation. And, maybe that'll last for the next, 5-10 years, and then someone will repeal it again, and we'll do a repeat of the cycle. So that's just how this thing works. I've seen it enough times. But other people may have a different opinion on that. So anyway, do appreciate everyone's time. Always love to hear comments on these things, and I'll catch you guys next video.